Hello, and thank you for joining me for this short video presenting the highlights of a book to be published in 2023. We're all aware of the tremendous progress made by the sales function over the last couple of decades, and you probably have witnessed that yourself in your own firm. In my research, I have identified three major transformations that the sales function has gone through in the last couple of decades. Before we get to that, let me ask you a simple question. How strategic is the sales function in your firm? Now, for instance, compared to the marketing function, if we look at a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being very strategic, which rating would you give to marketing and which rating would you give to sales? Now, I'm interested in having your answers, and if you want, you could send me an email and I would add your responses to previous ones I have received. But what we know is that the sales function in most firms does not have the strategic role that it deserves. And the reason for that is that selling has emerged in an era of seller power, where sales just had to push the products to the buyers. As a result, if you look at most textbooks, selling was just the push component of the marketing mix, which is not really fair. Now, over time, a number of things have happened, but especially buyers have acquired more and more power. Through better information, through competitive forces, buyers have more and more challenged sellers. And as a result, salespeople have had to understand better the real needs of customers and to adapt to these needs. So we moved from what we used to call product selling to solution selling. And then a number of selling techniques were developed, which we can put into the family of collaborative selling, which consists in asking questions to the buyer to develop a relationship and to better understand the requirements from the buyers. And as a result, the sales force has become much more effective in developing better customer relationships and in developing a higher perceived customer value of its offerings. Now, a second transformation happened. And the second transformation happened because of the frictions between marketing and sales. Now, these frictions were very inefficient. And of course, marketing and sales should have the same objective, which is to gain and retain customers. But marketing and sales are two different worlds, with two different cultures, and the frictions, have happened very often. So, to resolve these frictions, a second sales transformation has happened, which has consisted into better communication of information between sales and marketing both ways, and where sales has become more effective by better understanding the branding values that marketing was trying to communicate to the market. These two transformations, the first one, which is developing a client relationship, the second one, developing a relationship with marketing, will never end because we can always improve on these two dimensions. But these two transformations, deal with customer value, which is relatively simple in the sense that this is the essence of marketing and sales, the creation of customer value. The third transformation is a little more difficult because it involves corporate value creation. And neither marketing and sales are well equipped for corporate value because they do not have usually the financial knowledge and the business acumen required to face the challenge of corporate value creation. So what do we mean by corporate value? Corporate value is the current worth of a corporation. Well, this is very financial, but corporate value is more important than that because corporate value reflects the strengths of a business and the performance of its management. The core value of a business will influence its attractiveness to customers, employees, distributors, and all kinds of partners. It influences its power compared to competition, its power compared to distributors, its power compared to the financial circles. It influences the ability to invest in innovation, new products, capacity, and so on. So corporate value is essential and is becoming a key strategic objective today in most corporations. This is creating challenges, for sure, because the increased emphasis on corporate value creation means that sales has got to be aligned with the corporate strategic objectives, and that sales have got to shift from a very simple revenue growth objective to a corporate value growth objective, which is a little more complex, as we'll see. But of course, the opportunities are fantastic because selling can become more effective by exploiting better business information, especially financial information, by creating higher corporate value, and by upgrading the role of professionals that can become leaders in their own sales territories with a broader perspective, including the financial aspect of their situation. Now, the opportunities are great, the challenges also. I like to identify here 3 of the key challenges that have emerged from our research. The first one concerns more complex sales objectives. Now, corporate value is difficult to identify, so we need drivers to operationalize them. And the 3 drivers that are most commonly used are profitability for the short term, market share for the medium term, and customer satisfaction for the longer term. Now, you can understand the greater complexity for salespeople moving from a simple revenue growth objective to having to take care of these 3 key drivers during the sales process. Now, the second challenge deals with the negotiation process. Here you have a simple negotiation process from the prelude to the closure. Salespeople are familiar with that, and they go through that, trying to optimize revenues that they get from a deal with a given client. Now, with the 3 value drivers which we have identified, this is more difficult because in the process of offers and counter offers, salespeople have got to see where they are going in terms of value creation for the corporation in terms of these 3 drivers. But also, this has an impact on ZOPA, the zone of potential agreement between the buyer and the seller, which is already difficult to identify when the objective is simply revenue growth, and it's even more difficult when we deal with value drivers. Now, the third challenge is the end of this negotiation process, which we call the sales closure. We can see here that what we have to avoid is value destruction. In the traditional selling era, salespeople used to say a bad deal is better than no deal at all. Well, the reason being that they were getting a commission on revenue, so even if the revenues were not top, then we're still getting a commission. But here, they cannot, with a corporate value focus, get an easy deal, accepting what the buyer would require if it's at the expense of corporate value destruction. So this is already more difficult. But also, the salespeople have got to explore better the psychology of the and the counteroffers of the buyer to make sure that they are in the safe zone where they are sure to create value that is in a deal that is acceptable to the buyer. But they can also go beyond that and try to take some risk because the buyers don't always tell the whole truth. So, salespeople, good salespeople should try to explore going further to create even more corporate value. Be careful of not falling on the right side here, the cliff, which means no deal at all. But if sales professionals are able to explore better the safe zone and the risky zone, then the potential in corporate value is tremendous to them and for the corporation. So these are just 3 of the key challenges that we have identified, but of course there are others. And these challenges have got to be transformed into opportunities, and this requires significant training. Now, significant does not mean lengthy and boring, and does not mean wasting the time of the salespeople, because that time is always crucial. One way is experiential learning, and we have tested experiential learning for the purpose of tooling the salespeople for corporate value objectives, and we have found it very effective because it's focused, active, and effective, and we have found that effective upscaling of the sales pros can be achieved in about 1 day or online equivalent. And with a success rate of 80%, that means that 80% of salespeople can acquire the competencies during that time frame. So this third sales transformation requires significant training, but that does not mean long training. And we have here the solution offered by StratX Simulations, which is the RevManX simulator, which provides experiential sales training, and the customized sessions that go with it to provide the equivalent of a 1-day training. And if you want to know more about this solution, then you can contact corporate@stratexsim.com. But I'd like to conclude this video back to the highlights from my book. First conclusion is that the sales function has got a fantastic strategic potential, especially after the 3 transformations. And through these 3 transformations, the sales function has developed great relationship with clients, with marketing, and with corporate strategy, and really deserves a very strategic position within the firm. Now, my question to you is, how far is your firm in achieving this potential of the sales function? The second conclusion is the fact that experiential learning is a great way for the accelerated upscaling of the sales function to win the third sales transformation. Sales pros are not usually equipped with financial training nor business acumen, and experiential learning is a way to provide that effectively. And I have given to you the StratX.sim solution. But the question to you is, how are you upscaling your sales force to win the challenge of delivering corporate value growth? Because there probably are other ways and that you may have been exploring. So I'd like to keep the exchange further. You can send me an email at that address if you're interested, and we can keep the conversation. And I can keep you informed of my research and of the other aspects of my book. But in the meantime, I'd like to tell you thank you and to wish you great success in the third sales transformation.